Welcome back to Iron Sights Podcast After Dark. JP in the house. JP, what is up?
What up?
Good to have you back, man. Today, you had some stuff you want to talk about.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Really like application and goals for your handgun. Just because I think things have gotten really blurry lately with either me, myself, or people I hang out with, or what I see on the old social media.
Expand, please.
Yeah. So if we're talking competition guns versus what you carry every day, maybe one should have an accelerator ramp and a compensator, and maybe one of them shouldn't.
Got you.
So, yeah, I mean, I think we could start this off with just how we do in fitness. What are your goals, right? What's your goal for whatever handgun that you're working with? If you're the average person, that probably means like self-defense, home defense, or everyday carry. If you're the Turner brothers and you like USPSA, then maybe you're just trying to build the fastest race car out there.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also kind of like a weird middle ground that usually ends up being like the battle belt scenario, where like you have like a full size and maybe there is some competition stuff on it as long as it's reliable.
That's where things start to get really interesting, in my opinion. But yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, like,
it's a weird middle ground.
Yeah, we'll go into that more, but like even the most respected names in this space for training are starting to run like dual port compensators, red dots, accelerator ramps, and all this kind of shit.
It's crazy. I mean, a year ago they were very popular. We were porting slides and things like that, and now everybody's moved over to the comp.
Yeah,
and they're very popular. We don't have to name names, but those videos and the amount of attention they're getting is
it's really weird because
popular.
Like the Roland Special. Do you know what that is?
Yes.
Okay, so that, like, the reason why I asked is because it was weird. It like became like a hype for a long time. Like when I first really got into like learning about like shooting and like culturally what's hot and hype right now, that was like the hot shit.
Well, explain that too for people that don't know what it is. Why don't you go through it?
So like basically, if you have like a Glock 19 and you have like a compensator, and you have like a Trijicon RMR and a Surefire X300, that pretty much gives you like the size of the size and kind of like better performance than maybe like a full size gun, like a G17 or something like that. But it gives you reliability and it's a little bit more concealable maybe than like a full size G17, G34. But like a comped G19, it most likely, as long as you're okay with the grip, is going to be a better bet than just a standard G17.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yes.
And then like the X300, like is this massive pistol light, right? So that thing is going to fit pretty much flush with the compensator, when in other cases, maybe it doesn't fit flush. Maybe that thing like sticks out. And I know me, I've carried it appendix before and that thing will poke your dick.
Right. It's pretty, it's long.
Yeah.
So let's go back. Let's not get too far down that road, but you mentioned a couple of things, compensators, accelerator ramps, things like that. I mean, we got to go into it, but I think where you started was, let's talk about application.
Yeah.
But before we talk about application, let's talk about the goals. What are the goals of your gun? What are good ideas, maybe bad ideas?
Yeah.
Where were you going with that?
So I think let's start with the extreme stuff first. Okay. So like, let's say this is your hobby, is shooting handguns like Jake Turner, right? So you need to make sure that you have this full-on race car that if it breaks, it's not life or death. It's just the competition day might have ended. But other than that, there's no consequences, right? So maybe you do have the accelerator ramp, which adds more traction for your thumb to control recoil on the frame. So that's good, right? For performance. Now, pros and cons to like something like that. If it's like an external accelerator ramp rather than just like stippled into the frame like a Glock, maybe that adds a lot of weight and it makes it uncomfortable to carry concealed. But this is a race gun, so that doesn't fucking matter, right? Dual port comps, long comps that are like, inch or 2 inches added to your muzzle.
This is on your comp gun.
That's
on your
competition gun,
yeah.
right? Maybe that helps. I know personally from my G17 that my dual port comp does a lot. My G17 shoots super flat. It's got a ported slide and comp, and like a large comp. And I know those two things have really significantly impacted the recoil on that thing. So if you're talking like competition gun, maybe you get this big ass comp that maybe the gases shooting out in one direction. Maybe that doesn't bother you because it's a competition gun. Maybe adding 2 inches to your muzzle doesn't bother you because it's outside the waistband.
Not a big deal, yeah.
Competition gun. And then also with comps, there's reliability, right? So we went out and shot with Christine Feria, right?
Right.
And her manager, we brought all their Gunco guns, my personal Gunco guns, and then some of the other Gunco guns. And right away, I don't know why, this is my mistake that I didn't think about this until they actually shot the guns. But after we ran through all the fundamentals of shooting, when we actually got them shooting, the comped guns were a little harder to shoot if you don't have a good grip.
Yeah, they were having a really tough time.
Yeah, like they weren't getting back into battery each time because if you don't have a strong grip, they were forcing stovepipes, which is common with like a Glock, but it's really it's really bad if you have a compensator and like different recoil springs to have a weak grip. It's even worse, right? That just like that amplifies that. So if you have a weak grip with a Glock and you get stovepipes, you really don't want to throw a compensator on there. Okay, so like we're talking competition guns. We're talking about if this is your hobby and maybe you're just trying to get better at shooting, you can afford to run into these things. So like me personally, like I said, comps do a lot, and then you have to change the recoil spring. That helps with recoil, but then that also makes it to where now you're changing all these things on your gun, right? And now like you have to remember as you're shooting this gun, okay, I have to make sure I have a good grip. Maybe that's second nature for me, but somebody else who's building a comp gun, maybe they don't even know that like they did this comp and this recoil spring and that's what's causing the issues, right?
Yeah, so there's something to be said for that because, there's all this imagery they see these guys out at the range, they got these cool setups they appear to be cool. There's, new colors that are coming out. You can customize your gun, you can personalize it and whatever else. And a lot of people probably don't have a lot of in-depth knowledge about what each one of those, and let's just be honest with it. I kind of look at it like looking at hot rods, right? Or cars, like muscle cars. So I was a gearhead when I was growing up, and it was the Chevy or the Ford, right? And you could buy any number of bolt-on things to throw on your motor externally to maybe add a little bit of horsepower here or there. But each time you do that, it changes things downstream, right? Or down the line. And then there's a lot of things you can do internally, but obviously that requires a lot more precision work. And everything on the outside and internally needs to be built up to par in order to support what's going on. So an example, like you can't just throw a supercharger or a blower right on a stock motor. You'll blow the thing to pieces.
Yeah.
So, and even if you did do all of that, let's say you did the motor right, well, you have a drivetrain. So you got your transmission, you got your drive line, you got your rear end differential, axles, all that other stuff. That all has to be up to speed as well. So just throwing a compensator on the end of your gun, maybe throw a new barrel on it. Well, think about all the physics that go into making that gun work. Yeah. There's springs, there's clearances, there's tolerances, there's wear and tear. Each time you make an adjustment, you are potentially also adding a potential problem to that firearm because those things coming out of the factory are not built for that. I mean, some of them, I think there's probably some technology now, and I'm not an expert on any of this stuff, but I'm sure Glock's already thought of this, and they know that people are doing these types of things, their gun or SIG or whoever, and so they're starting to make workarounds so that people don't have issues with these guns, knowing they're going to modify them.
Yeah.
But the point is, you start fucking with your base level stock car. It's not a stock car anymore. Yeah. Right? You gotta make adjustments.
I always tell people it's just like cars. You know what I mean? Like I remember when I was building up I had a Mitsubishi Evolution. I remember like I finally got I got it on ethanol and I built the motor exactly how I wanted it, the responsiveness I wanted and everything like that. And then all of a sudden, I have 500 pounds of torque and then my fucking drivetrain's becoming an issue.
Yeah.
Like you need a new clutch and all of a sudden it's just money on top of money. So as we're talking about all these mods, think about there's a cause and effect. And if you add more horsepower, you probably need better brakes. That's pretty much what we're trying to say here.
It's a simple analogy.
Yeah. So with that being said, we'll keep talking about this competition gun. We have new recoil spring that goes with the comp, right? That helps with recoil. You need a different slide if you want it to track a little bit smoother, ported slide, windows, things like that. Maybe get serrations, that takes off weight. And then also you need milling because you probably are going to run a red dot if you're doing all this to your gun. You're probably not running iron sights, right? If you're running a red dot and you're a competition gun, you want the biggest window. Maybe that's an SRO. Maybe that's a Holosun if you don't care about reliability.
Leave that one alone. Kidding, JP.
Okay.
You didn't know, now you know.
But so it's a competition gun. So you probably want a big ass window is my point, right? And that's fine. Maybe you want a Delta Point. Those windows are cool too. And then you want a big flared magwell. Because I don't know if you've ever used like a stock Glock versus like a really aggressive magwell, dude. It makes it a ton easier.
Yeah, it's more forgiving.
It's way more forgiving, dude.
When you're moving with speed, you absolutely have more leeway to not be awesome.
Yeah, like when I'm running like my personal favorite is the Terran Tactical competition magwell. If I'm just talking about full on speed outside the waistband. That thing has been nothing but great to me, and it
looks like a funnel on the end of the grip.
It's massive though. Yeah. It looks like you have like a vacuum cleaner at the bottom of your gun, right?
But that's exactly what it's supposed to be.
Yeah,
right?
We're talking about race guns, right? And then so you might have framework, you might have stippling, you might have grip tape. Grip tape is cool for race guns. Stippling is cool, but grip tape and stippling maybe don't feel great against your body. But since they're race guns and they're outside the waistband. Maybe that's okay.
So you're talking about that stippled gun riding against your pork chop all day long inside that waist belt.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, and depending on how aggressive it is or what shape it is, whatever. And sometimes even people, I think like Beretta and CZ get away with just like really smooth added on handles. I don't know how you would call it, but like the bolt on grips, because a lot of them have like metal frames, right? Those are really good to go if you're just running a 30-second to 1 minute stage. Because even if you get sweaty, competition people use chalk, right? So that ultimately that doesn't matter anyways, like the grip tape and all that other shit, unless you're somebody who doesn't use chalk. So yeah, there's a lot of forgiveness happening with the competition gun. Then you have like the trigger. You know, we've seen some of our buddies like pin the safety on 2011s.
There's all kinds of shit they're doing, man.
Yeah. So like realistically, let's be real here. You probably don't want to pin a safety on your carry gun, right? Or even combat gun. I know Glocks are like a press safety instead of like an actual switch. I get that's similar, but yeah, if you're an experienced shooter, maybe you just always know how to, you know, have a straight finger or whatever. I don't know. But my point is on competition guns, people do things like that where they pin the safety so that whenever you're ready to shoot, you just pull that trigger.
Yeah.
There's no like finding the safety switch on the frame or on the actual trigger shoe.
Yeah, and the safety's there for a reason, but in competition, it's all very controlled. It's all very timed.
Yeah.
It's pretty controlled. We talked about this on other podcasts. It's very safe.
Mm-hmm. So, and then like if we're talking about Glocks or 2011s, those triggers can get really light, really short, right? Like so the travel can get really short. The actual wall pressure can go down a lot depending on like what brand you use or what, you know, concoction you build up, whatever Frankenstein trigger you want to put together. So my point is that's pretty much what a race gun would look like. You might have extended levers, like the G34 mag release is what I use on my 17. That's outside the waistband. But then I might use like a Vickers Tactical on my 19, which is better than the stock one, but it's also not crazy, like sticking out like a G34.
Right.
And like Zev has like an extended mag release, like that thing just goes off on its own all the time. Yeah. When I've used
Give it a good grip. Yeah. And it's gone. There it goes.
Yeah. So that's pretty much what we're looking at for a competition gun. And that's like attack, offense, race car. And you know, like I've seen Jake's fucking slide lever on his 2011 just straight fall right off like a handful of times. And I know he knows in his heart he's not going to carry that thing as self-defense, but also like, could you imagine carrying a gun self-defense and like,
it falls apart on you.
The fucking safety lever just slides out the side?
No, I can't.
Yeah.
I don't even want to.
Yeah. So if that's your goal, to build a race car and race on the track only, then that's what we're looking at.
Build a race car.
Right. Yeah. But we'll get down this road a little bit more, a little bit later on. But just the point of this is we want to give you different ideas for what your goals are and try not to blend them in an unsafe manner or like maybe a way that isn't productive.
Yeah, I was just going to say like impractical.
Yeah, it's just not practical, right? So then we'll go to, let's say, concealed. Okay. Now this one's always fun because me always doing product development, people might see like currently I'm running a compensator on my carry Glock 19.
Mm-hmm.
I have a Gunco carry magwell. It doesn't help my reloads at all, but it gives me a little bit more pinky rest. A little bit more grip on the bottom of the frame.
Yep.
Just a little bit. I like that. It's not a whole lot. I have goon tape on there, not stippling. I love Rocket City stippling, but let's be honest, dude, I have too many like guns that I'm like working on to stipple every single gun, Goon tape's cheap and effective, and it gives me a little bit more grip. It absorbs the sweat, and it's like $10.
So yeah, here's the thing. So like my hands get really sweaty. It's like a curse. And it's usually, if I'm out on I live in California, so, it's pretty temperate here. It doesn't get uber hot, but I have had a couple of training days where it's been really hot out there and it starts to get to me even using the stippling. I've run stippled guns, and it just, once the hands are wet, right. Or in this case, sweaty, i.e. wet, and that stipple starts to rub on there, like it actually makes it really uncomfortable. Like for on a long training day, if you're if this is a self-defense gun or whatever, it's probably not going to be like that. But if you're going to be training with it for long periods of time, I found that it's actually not that comfortable for me. So I prefer the tape.
Yeah. I really enjoy the tape. And like I said, it's temporary if you want it to be, and it's cheap. So like, it's up to you. Getting that undercut in the Glock frame usually helps because I have like Glock knuckle, to where like the bottom of the frame rubs against my middle finger. So I do prefer stippling in most cases. It depends on what stipple job you get to. I think I know what gun you're talking about that you ran. Some are more aggressive than others. Sometimes it helps, and sometimes it's just for looks, But yeah, so I run goon tape. I run like a very slim magwell. I have one of my carry base plates on there that I just carry with. And then I have a spare mag that's like the large base plate, right? That's actually not in the gun because you don't want to print when you're carrying concealed. I have a single window Gunco slide because you want to minimize how many windows you have.
Yeah, talk about that.
On a carried Glock. I did want to take a little weight off, but I'll be honest with you, I don't need any windows on my carry Glock. Like the G34 comes from the Glock factory with a big window. Glocks are fucking bulletproof, dude. So I've dropped my carry G19 in the mud or rubbed it against the mud, in the middle of like doing prone, kneeling, shit like that. And it's worked flawlessly. That still doesn't mean you want to like purposely allow yourself to like have more nooks and crannies to get debris, dust, dirt, gravel.
There it is right there. Yeah. What are you presenting by allowing more things to enter into the mechanics, the mechanism of the gun that could potentially slow it down or shut it down?
Yeah. So when you're talking about like carry, if it's your carry gun, your goal is probably concealable safety and reliability. That's probably the goal, right? So when you do more window cuts and serrations and things like that, some might be for grip, and a lot of it's to take weight off the slide. Now that top window cut, it's kind of like it's not a bad one. It's very minimal. But like I said, I almost would prefer no window cut. That was actually just a slide that Gunco had specially made. So I rocked it, you know what I mean? But like Gunco makes 3 window slides, and I have that on my combat belt G17, which we'll talk about later. That's a little bit more forgiving. But I prefer no windows if I can help it. It helps with taking weight off the slide, but it also, like I said, it allows mud and debris and sand, and the gun's not airtight, so like shit's gonna get in there either way.
Yeah.
But you still want to minimize that, right? I have a compensator because Gunco and me are constantly doing product development, so that's something that we're working on right now. So that's why I'm doing that. But I'll tell you right now, my favorite go-to concealed barrel setup was either my G45 with a stock fucking barrel, or my G19 with my Arc Division barrel with no comp. And I'm just talking about comfort and reliability, right? With those two situations, right? My compensator, like I said, it's more for product development than anything. The the compensator I'm currently running on there is too large and it gets uncomfortable.
You just in terms of length when carrying,
just when it's carrying. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like, if you're gonna tell me like, if you're gonna ask me, I should say, do you think it's worth it to add an inch and a half to the end of your muzzle to reduce recoil by like 15-20%?
It depends on how short you are.
Yeah.
Right? It depends on what that setup
I personally like have a good grip. I take pride in my fucking handgun grip, and I don't need a compensator.
There comes a point where you're splitting hairs.
Yeah.
You're starting to split hairs, and how much of it is the gun versus how much is your ability? And what are we really getting here? I mean, is it, 100th of a second, in your splits, your shot splits, or, is it, what are we talking, like a milli-inch? If that's even a millimeter off in terms of keyholing your shots. Let's be honest, like how much advantage are we really getting here at a certain point? And I don't think there's an answer for that. It's up to the individual and what they think they're getting and what their actual performance, I guess, data tells them. You would know, but I don't know. I think what we're getting at is where you're getting at is people are throwing all kinds of shit on their guns before they've without maybe thinking down the whole line. What's the goal? What's the application?
So we're going to talk about goals and applications and bring all these together once we get through like this concealed and then outside the waistband, because I do actually want to talk about that and some experiences I've had with people that I've shot with and like why there's this weird blurry gray area now, right? So I have this comp. It's more for product development. I like comps. I prefer comps, but on my carry, if it wasn't for product development, I'd be rocking a stock barrel most likely. Mm-hmm. My trigger, I use my own trigger shoe and a stock Glock internals for my carry 19. I love my trigger, dude. Like so I'm gonna like help and hurt my trigger right now. So in terms of selling it, it definitely makes a difference. Every trigger that I've ever shot, like my trigger shoe on somebody's gun, like the travel is shorter and the break is cleaner with my trigger shoe. I love it. It's always worked really well for me. And I would suggest, if anybody wants to increase their performance with either follow-up shot speed because it's shorter travel, mm-hmm. or just the fact that you get a more positive wall, like a more like carrot crack, as they like to say in the trigger world, wall. I'd say that performance-wise, there's no doubt about it. Like your touch, feedback, all of that, the trigger helps. But I also think people should stick with the factory Glock trigger if they can get away with it. Mm-hmm. If we're talking carry. If they can get away with it, what I mean by get away with it is that my friend runs like a Gen 4 G19 and I absolutely fucking hate his trigger. But that's just one Glock out of so many that I'm totally fine.
That's an important point.
They're not all the same.
Correct.
And I think you prefer on your G17.
I love my stock trigger.
Yeah. And
I love it.
I had a stock trigger on my G17 and don't get me wrong, maybe I didn't know as much about triggers then as I do now, but it didn't bother me at all. I've shot plenty of 19s with a stock trigger, Gen 3 and Gen 5, and it's just fine. So I say in terms of reliability, I've never seen a Glock trigger, a factory one, fail. And just for the sake of data, I'm going to say this, and this isn't throwing any companies under the bus. I love Apex tactical triggers. That's the trigger assembly that I run inside of my G17.
So the internals.
The internals, I run that with my shoe because I prefer my trigger shoe. That's why I made it. You know what I mean? But
weird.
Yeah. But I ran nothing but Apex triggers on every Glock I've ever had over the last few years. But after like 25, 30,000 rounds on my G17 before I made my current trigger shoe, like the safety just whole ass came out in the middle of shooting it.
Fell apart.
Yeah. But I mean, come on, dude. Like it lasted 25 to 30,000 rounds ish of me only pushing that gun. It wasn't on my carry gun. It was on my combat belt gun that I'm just always trying to burn shit down with. Like that's no knock on Apex tactical. They make a great trigger, but my point in saying that is that's my go-to trigger assembly. And I still wouldn't suggest to put that on your carry gun because it straight blew, like the spring just blew out in my finger.
Right. The stock Glock triggers just hold up.
Yeah. So
they just hold up.
I've never seen one fail, dude. One of my shotguns, the all olive one with the stippling, that gun was actually like a 15-year-old Gen 3 G17.
Still running.
That was a police trade-in. And I shot it before I turned it into the shop Glock. And dude, the trigger didn't feel like amazing, but the thing ran just fine. Other than it feeling slick and worn down, like it ran just fine. So the reason why I bring that up is because if you're carrying a gun, like honestly, dude, and if we're talking just Glocks here, stock trigger. If you're carrying like an M&P, I don't know, those triggers are kind of shitty. But just from what I know, Jake runs like a Beretta 92 or M9. Those things I think are great stock as is. Maybe just like a red dot, but like I think those things are outstanding as is.
Yeah, but to your point, every trigger is different. Like even from the manufacturer. So even every Glock 17 trigger is going to feel a little bit different, or could feel a little bit different. Maybe it's not fair to say it will, but it could, because it's an individual trigger. It's you never know what you're going to get. Yeah.
And so I'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute, but with that being said, like there's going to be people who are closer to how I don't know. I feel like I'm in the middle. There's going to be people who are like, fuck it. If you're trained well, you can use whatever the fuck we put in your hand, which is true. But also there's going to be the people that are like, I want every advantage I can possibly get. Why not upgrade if I can? Which is also true.
There's nothing wrong with either of those things.
Yeah. Right. So as far as concealed, I run like an extended mag release, but it's like hardly extended. It's just like a little bit more than the factory one. It's a Vickers, I think. Like I said, stock trigger assembly inside, but because I have the compensator, I had to use 5 different recoil springs. Now, who's to say that somebody who's less well-read than me or experienced gets a compensator because they see everybody like me and all my friends running compensators, and no one really told them like, hey man, I fucking had to embarrass myself for 4 different recoil springs before I found the right poundage and spring rate. So like
for the gun, for the ammo you're shooting, for the application,
so
all of those things.
The ammo matters. I always run 115 or 124 when I'm shooting at the range. Pretty much always. That's all I ever run. I get the same ammo. So if that's the case, then I had like a 13, 14, 15, 16 pound and the stock spring. I had 5 different springs. And after running 4 different ones, including the stock one, I finally got to the spring that works well with my particular comp, because every comp is different with my barrel length.
And the windows,
excuse me,
right? And slide.
The fact that I have a Trigicon SRO red dot, which changes where the weight is on the slide with 1 window, and with 115, 124 grain ammo, right? So like all these things apply and they all play a role. Do I want your average person ever to think about that? Fuck no. Like I want to figure this out so they don't have to think about it. But even then, like I like compensators, but I still don't drive people to compensators on their carry gun because of that. Because why am I going to tell them this should work? This is what I use. But like, I can't really fully confidently tell them, because who knows if they're cheap with their ammo? Who knows if they get like too nice ammo that's like 147 grain and they only shoot fucking hollow points? Who knows if like that person can even use a comp?
That's actually a really good point. Like training, I mean, probably a discussion for another time, but okay, so that's your range ammo, but what's your home defense ammo or your carry
That's a
ammo?
good discussion. Right? And
have you shot with it?
This is probably going to hurt. It's probably going to hurt like my reputation a little bit. I don't know, but I tend to agree with what I think Garanthem said. If you're going to train at the range all the time with whatever ammo, shoot whatever ammo you train with. That's pretty common, right? So law enforcement uses like the same hollow points that they would carry, right? With the ammo crisis and everything going on, and let's just fucking basic finances. Right. Who wants to shoot fucking $2 federal Hydra shock every time they're at the range? You shoot with fucking Kyle, you dump 1,000 rounds in one day. You know what I mean? I'm not shooting 1,000 Hydra shock. Yeah. So I'll be honest with you, dude. I carry hollow points when I have a stock Glock, and I carry range ammo with everything else because I know that works. Same. That's consistent.
Same.
And I don't think that hollow points don't work. I understand the whole point behind hollow points, but I mean the whole time you're shooting anyways, you should be thinking about your surroundings, where that bullet goes, and all these kinds of things anyways.
There's a lot of discussion around that. Yeah. Well, if you shoot the hollow point, then it doesn't go through your wall and then through your neighbor's wall. And really?
You should already be thinking about all that anyways, with or without a hollow point. But anyways, like you said, different discussion for a different day. But so my carry 19 is actually more than I would suggest most people carry. And the reason for that is because I'm product testing constantly. Okay. When something's not right, I change it. Or I try to figure out what's wrong with it. Now, my personal favorite go-to carry, and I'll come back to this later, is the G45 with a Trijicon RMR or SRO. I have one carry base plate in there, and my spare base plate, that's the large base plate, right?
The large base plate.
Yeah. That's what it's labeled as. But you know what I mean. So anyway, that's actually my go-to. And I'm talking about just that and possibly a weapon light. I actually am kind of weird. I carry a X300A, which is the quick detach X300. I always have that on me, off my gun. And I carry just a gun with no weapon light in my holster. And I train with like my handheld, which has my thumb ring and that. But then I also have a backup light. So not to sound like I'm fucking ready for anything,
It's pretty much
I have a backup handheld. Fucking Jerry told me to do that. So I did it, and I chose an X300 because I can slap it on my fucking
gun if it goes down.
If it goes down.
Goes
yeah,
down,
exactly.
yeah.
But I also keep it off the gun externally as my backup.
This is actually another discussion. Probably we could get into this. Like some people probably listen to this going, wait, what? He carries 3 lights on him at all times? No, he carries 2 lights with him at all times. The weapon light that he has isn't actually necessarily attached to his weapon, though.
Yeah,
is what you heard him say. We'll cover that another time.
Yeah. I don't know. I like doing that, but okay. So that's my concealed setup, right? That's how I normally run it. But then, like I said, my go-to, which I've ran in the past, and I'm probably going to come back around to when I get another G45, is just a G45 with a Trijicon.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Basic.
Now,
yeah. And then we're going to talk about like combat setup now. And I'll say combat because like people like to say shit hit the fan gun. You know what I mean? Like either you're military, law enforcement, or this is like your, if we ever need to fucking.
Yeah. Okay. But here's the thing with this statement, the shit hit the fan. If the shit hits the fan, what gun are you grabbing?
Yeah.
I'm not grabbing a fucking pistol.
Yeah.
I'm not grabbing I mean, I'm taking one along for the ride, but that's not what I'm grabbing.
I guess what I mean by that is your shit hit the fan sidearm, because you're definitely grabbing an AR.
that's the first thing.
You're not grabbing a shotgun.
Yeah,
you're not grabbing
a carbine.
Yeah. Your shit hit the fan. Let's just say what's on your kit when you feel like going to the Bat Cave.
All right, so we're going zombie apocalypse is what we're talking about.
Yeah, so whatever. Zombie apocalypse. And let's be honest, dude, you know, the 2A world, hella people are just sitting on the edge of their seat waiting for them.
There's not one person that hasn't thought about it.
Yeah.
So, to what extent that may vary, but okay, I'm with you.
So for me, that's a Glock 17. That's the same, my first Glock that I bought since I started shooting. I owned a Glock 21 a decade ago and never did anything with it. And we talked about this, but since I actually started training and shooting regularly, I've run the same G17. It's not the shop Glock. It's actually the one that I've just like done all product testing on. That's been tried and true. The one that the Apex trigger blew up on. But again, I mean, it's been through everything. So I'm not even knocking them for that. But so that one has the Apex trigger assembly inside of it with my trigger shoe. I have a Surefire X300.
That's saying something we just said there. So you went back to the Apex trigger even after it blew up.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm going to keep going back to it.
Just a point to make that, you know, you've said that it blew up, but you also promptly went out, got another one and threw it right back in your gun.
Yeah. And I've shot a lot of triggers, dude. And for me, like I haven't shot the new Timney, which is everybody's talking about that one, but I've shot a lot and the Apex is for sure my favorite.
Yeah. And they all have their own issues.
Yeah.
So I've heard
different.
just as much about the Timney triggers as anything else. So,
yeah.
Anyhow.
So I run X300 light, weapon light, because it's outside the waistband, right? I usually run a Safariland holster, but because I've been playing with comps, I can't really do that right now. I have a Trijicon RMR. It is noticeably harder to get sight acquisition with the Trijicon RMR than it is the SRO, but the RMR, dude, like that thing is fucking bulletproof, dude. I've dropped it hella times. You can see where I've dropped it. I've racked it against doors, racked it against belts, the bottom of my shoe. Like that thing has lived through so much, dude. I've had that optic now for a couple of years and I haven't changed the battery yet.
This goes to applicability and the practicality, but also dependability.
Yeah.
Piece. Like if you're gonna, this is the one you got to take to the shit. The zombie apocalypse, you want to make sure it ain't gonna break when you're.
Yeah, if you're telling me that I haven't fucking changed my battery in a couple years and I've banged the thing and dropped it hella times and like the glass is perfectly good.
Pretty good bet.
Yeah, I'm totally down for that. And I can point and shoot at 10 yards anytime I want. I don't need to find that dot if it's just 10 yards. But anything past that, I mean, obviously you can just shake it off and, get good sight acquisition. But anyway.
Listen up, kids.
That one has a 3-window slide. And that's not for reliability or whatever. That's because that slide with that comp and that recoil spring has like a Terran Tactical uncaptured light spring in it because it's got like a dual port comp. That setup, dude, like I can fucking burn shit down with that gun, and I just like it so much that I keep it. I've never had debris go into that slide, and I've played in mud and moon dust and stuff like that. I think my Safari Land has protected it very well. So I think says more about the holster than anything. But
that's a good point.
But that slide's never given me issues, even though I know I just said that I'd prefer to have single window or no window. And then I have goon tape on that with the Terran Tactical full race magwell, the big ass magwell, and that thing is just, like I said, super easy to reload, right? And I carry like large base plates with that. G34 extended mag release because it's still Glock factory, it's still reliable, it's not over the top, but it's clearly better than the stock one. G34 extended slide lock. Again, it's just a little bit of a extension. It's from the factory. I feel like I have good reliability with it. And honestly, like if this is a shit hit the fan gun, like if I didn't run through so many rounds with like that slide, that comp, that spring, and that trigger assembly, then I wouldn't even suggest shit hit the fan with that stuff. But since I personally have used this setup so much and it's worked so good, I'm just going to keep it because like, why would I fuck with it if it works so well? Like that's my best performing gun and it hasn't had reliability issues, right?
Well, they say, it works until it doesn't. And you have to decide whenever it doesn't, what direction you're going to go. But I think you're being very fair here in terms of your review of the stuff that you're running and the fact that things do break. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. So if you buy a gun and you think it's not going to break, if you use it, consistently and over a long period of time, you're wrong about that. These things happen. What's interesting that I find is in this part of the conversation, what we're talking about, and those people who listen to the show know there's a lot of Glock talk on the show because that's what we can get here in California. It's very accessible. They're very reliable guns. They're very dependable guns. They're affordable guns. There's all kinds of reasons why you and I have more of those than anything else. But what I find interesting is the people that are running these things, unless if they put a bunch of bolt-on shit onto it, they tend to have a few issues, and we see this happening out on the range all the time. It's like, well, what's going on? Is that a light strike? No. Like I'm having this issue with through this comp on there, and the spring's probably not right, or whatever. I changed this ammo out. I've never had an issue, but I changed my ammo, and now I'm having issues. Yeah, and they're trying to kind of diagnose or break down what's wrong with their gun. The people that are running stock guns never have these issues. No. The people that spend like $6,000 on a gun, like some of these high-end guns, we're talking, you mentioned 1911s, they're constantly having issues or bitching about it. Now, those issues might be just their own little personal issues within the gun. Maybe it's not mechanical.
It might be splitting hairs because they, like we shoot with people that like, they know so much and have so much experience with these things that they're splitting hairs on a race car.
Right. It's very, very minute things that they're unhappy with. And so, but every time, if you're looking at it under that kind of scrutiny and you're tweaking this dial here and you're toggling this switch over here, trying to get this perfect setup, understand then your margin for error, your margin for something to not feel right or go wrong or whatever also goes up. Yeah. Right. Like you're going to probably have issues. So, again, it's just interesting what I see people coming out with these really high end, expensive guns. They seem to be having more issues after they fuck with them, to try to make them this much faster or this much lighter or, whatever, than people out there on the range just shooting their basic shit. And by the way, they're not necessarily better shooters, which is a whole other topic, right? Yeah. They look cool, right? They seem to perform well, but over the longer term, I'm not impressed. I'm not sold. So just going back to your setups and application, like I just prefer something that's a bit more dependable. And I know when I pull it out of the holster, it's going to work the way I know it's supposed to work.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like, if you notice with my G17, my shit hit the fan kit gun, right? If you notice that versus my carry gun, it's a little different, but you notice how like I talk about how important performance and reliability is to me, but also you notice how I did a little bit more risky stuff on the 17, the kit style gun, right? That seems to be the case with everybody that I'm finding, like with every gun, like not just like their shit the fan gun. Like people are doing this with their carry guns, and it's kind of alarming to me because like I know I make firearm like accessories and stuff like that, and I'm trying to make better products, not just for more enjoyable stuff, but just to make the gun like a better gun. So I know I'm going to sell it to people and they're going to do whatever they do with it. I can't control what people do with my shit, right? But with that being said, I have seen people where I'm like, I don't think you should be, like applying, let's say like my trigger on your only carry gun. And I think I've told you this kind of thing before. I've had a couple people tell me that all they have is a G19. Like, I really want your trigger. Yeah. Like I have a friend who he has a G17. He used my trigger, but this guy's ex-military and he knows how to do shit. So he can diagnose what's going on then and there. I have no issues with that guy having his only Glock having a trigger. Mm-hmm. But, you have a couple people who they have, less than a year's shooting experience every so many months. I don't want them running my trigger because I don't want them. Not that I've personally had any reliability issues with my trigger or anything like that. I don't want them to have to think about what could and couldn't be going wrong with their gun because maybe their pad placement on their index finger isn't perfect for the trigger safety because maybe they have short fingers. And I've never ran into that issue, but I don't have short fucking fingers. Right. You know what I mean? So like we get into this gray area now where like my kit gun, that's the gun I started all this with. And that's the one that's got the most experimenting on it. And that's just the setup I like. Now, if you notice, like I said, my preferred carry gun is a G45 with just an optic. That's it. Right. So if that's the case, like you're starting to see like a lot of people we shoot with, a lot of people on the internet, people who are just constantly messaging me and stuff like that and like buying my stuff. And I'm helping them out throughout along the way, but maybe financially they can't have like a carry gun and a fun gun. Mm-hmm. So they just do everything to their one gun. Now that gets kind of dangerous. Yeah, I want to make a living. Yeah, I want to fucking drive an Audi R8, but I also don't want to tell people to fucking completely pimp out your fucking carry gun. That's the only gun you have. Because it doesn't matter if it's my company, Terran Tactical, Agency Arms. It doesn't matter who it is. You shouldn't be doing that shit to your only gun.
Yeah, the other thing I find interesting too is people are doing this because they're seeing their buddies get into it, and their buddies got There are a couple of guns down the line, right? Mm-hmm. And they've kind of learned, and you were mentioning this, like I've changed some things and you learned some things along the way. And ultimately, like you don't have enough time, bandwidth, money to stipple every gun, but you've learned kind of what you like, what you don't like through application, through the process. Well, you get a guy that comes out to the range and he's got his little stock gun, right? And he's looking around and he looks plain, mm-hmm. right? He's not fitting in with the in crowd now. Yeah. So the next thing he does is after one day on the range, he takes it to the shop, sends it out, and comes back with no reference points. Yeah. Right. No reference points. Well, I want all this done. I want all that. And calls up his buddy. Which trigger did you have again? Or what's that comp you were running? I really like that barrel color that you had. Where'd you get that? They start basically making this Frankenstein gun, and they come back, they have no reference points with regard to their own performance, how that original gun felt, and whether what they have is working for them or not. They're just kind of trying to figure it out. Or worse, they buy a gun, never even shoot it before, and they send it out to have all this work done to it. That's concerning to me. Like I don't really get that. Like, crawl before you walk here, walk before you run. And by the way, how do you know that $3,000 that you're about to throw at that $600 gun even gives you what you think it's going to give you in the end? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Call me an old man for thinking that way, but I'm very practical in this sense. Like I'm like, you know what, that makes zero sense to me. It's like driving the car, your grocery getter off the lot. Like the car that you're going to take your family, you got to put the car seats in and go get groceries in. You take it straight to the shop, right? And you have them completely tear it apart and put all high performance stuff in there, suspension, motor, supercharger, differentials, new brakes, and whatever else. And now you've made an impractical car, right? An impractical car. It's not comfortable. It's not practical to do the things you need to do with it. And you have no point of reference. And so, you have nothing better to say than this gun is either great or this gun sucks. And if you say it sucks, then, well, I guess what I'm saying is, if you did all this work to a gun and you don't like it, right? You have no reference point, then you're a fucking idiot. That's just what that's just what you have no reference point.
Not only are you like ill-informed, but also maybe you're taking advice from people who aren't thinking about you and your best interest, what your goals are, like we said to start this with, versus like what maybe you need. You know what I mean? Trust me, I'm telling you, like, I'm not just bullshitting you. I've had people that want my trigger and I tell them straight up, like, dude, let's get you training more. And maybe let's get you a backplate if you need a fucking ghost on your gun, because that's not going to hurt reliability at all. And that will give you a little bit of touch feedback for like where your gun is on like concealed setups. But outside of that, dude, let's like get good with like the stock Glock. And as you add things, let's understand what that's adding. And now you can get the feedback and say, oh, wow, that trigger really is different. Or I'm used to my pad placement being like this on the rounded stock trigger. And now you have a flat face trigger and
feels
it's different now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Rather than just like, you know, setting them up right away, like fully built car.
Yeah. We've talked about this before. Like you walk into the car dealership or like you walk into the gun dealer. What are they going to do? Well, they have an agenda.
Yeah.
Right. Their agenda is to make money and sell you guns and sell you gun parts. So, you know, before you walk in and say, well, what I want to do this, what do I need? Maybe do some research and reach out and maybe get some trigger time on a gun that has a similar setup to the one that you're thinking you want or you think you need, and really work backwards through that problem instead of starting at the front end, start at the back end.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, well, everybody's always going to say you need training, right? Because I mean, it's true. Like guns are like, it's a high responsibility to have. So training is the most important thing. But if you want to mod your gun, I get it. Everybody wants to mod their guns. Sure. Everybody wants to. It's just like cars. I don't know. I guess I would hope that I can build people's trust and add value through guidance rather than like trying to force them to buy shit for no fucking reason when they just don't need it, you know? But anyways, to circle back to what we were saying, like I said, my full kit G17, it's got like this gray area, right? Because I'm really focused on reliability, but not so much so that I didn't run like a Apex hybrid trigger with my shoe, right? Not so much so that I didn't run like a recoil spring that fits my dual port comp. Remember we had Christine shoot, and like the first time she was shooting the first like 20 rounds, she just couldn't keep my G17 or my G19 to stay like flat, and like they kept stovepiping. Like she actually had to re-rack it every single time. And I was like, I know my guns aren't fucking broken, you know what I mean? And then I ran them both right after her and it was just fine. But that's something that needs to be talked about, because you can't just go on Instagram and be like, well, fuck, dude, Train with Purpose runs this setup. And then
I should have that.
And then you have it and you haven't done like the foundational stuff, like work on your grip or your trigger placement, your finger placement on the trigger and things like that. If you haven't worked on that and figured that out, you might have just bought yourself a less reliable gun, even though the gun itself's not less reliable, but the way you handled it, because it's a race car now.
Good point.
Right. So like, I'm sure they were thinking, you know, Christine and her manager, like, oh shit, these guns aren't working. But really, we had them circle back at the very end of that range day after running them through a ton of rounds, doing all this instruction on working on grip and trigger pull and sight acquisition, stance, all this stuff, right? At the end of the day, guess what Christine wanted to shoot? She wanted to shoot the 17 with the dual port comp, and she had zero malfunctions.
No issues, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so people need to think about these things when you get into modding. So know your goals. Like, are you building a race car that has nothing to do with safety and prep life or self-defense? If it has nothing to do with that, build your race gun where shit will fall off as you're racing, because, oh shit, like, oh well, like we're at the racetrack.
And know that it will and have fun doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And if you want to carry a gun, I'm always going to tell them, dude, get good with your stock Glock. And the only thing that I think is like really an important upgrade if you want to spend money is a red dot. Either that's milling the slide or buying a slide that fits the red dot. That's quality. That has to be quality, because I've also seen people use the Glock MOS slide or cheap slides just in general, and the red dot comes right off. So you either have to buy like a forward controls, like red dot mount if you're going to use the Glock MOS, like I had on my 45, or like a Gunco slide, something
or
like
remill
that.
it.
Yeah. Something that you know for a fact, like, okay, this thing's been tested, you know?
Yeah, there's something to be said about these carry guns too, in terms of modification and having a CCW license. And should you get into trouble and you have a modified gun, understand that could be a problem for you. Again, if you got into a situation where you had to use your gun and things were in question, because the there are forces of evil out there that are going to try and pick apart every single little thing that you did that made that situation more dangerous, right?
I could totally
to make the shitbag look better in their particular situation. Should you be in that kind of, should you get caught in that kind of a circumstance, and I mean, when you're registering your guns on your permits, right? You're registering a serial number for a stock gun, not all the other stuff that you put on there. And if something goes down, understand that you're going to be responsible for every screw, every pin, every change, every sight height difference. One of those bullets goes stray, doesn't go on target,
100%,
and you have aftermarket sights. Iron sights, whether it be a red dot and it doesn't hit, well, then that's the reason. And because you modified that gun, it's your fault now.
Yeah.
And you were negligent, not the shitbag that tried to rob you and your family in the parking lot.
None of it has to be logical, because you have to remember, if we're talking about the 2A community, there's already so many, like, there's already so much like false made up vernacular in the 2A community. Like fucking, I think we were joking about this the other day, like 1,000-round clips or some shit like that. Like, who the fuck?
Oh, I can tell you who the fuck says that.
Yeah.
But I'm not kidding.
I know.
We don't need to.
My
just
point.
Get me fired up.
My point is, though, is that like there's already people that are just hoping and praying that you do something like make your gun safer than, or make it easier to use than the factory Glock. But they're going to use that to say, oh, he had a hair trigger. That thing just goes off on its own, which it doesn't. But that's like the person that's not informed, like, I don't know, the jury. If you ever have to,
the attorney, the prosecuting attorney,
everybody involved, if they're not a gun person, they're just not going to be informed. And so anytime we're talking about any self-defense situation, whether we're talking about the topics we're talking about now, or just in general, there's always going to be a ton of like lawyer stuff you're going to have to think about if you ever have to defend yourself. So that's a whole nother thing, but it's definitely a thing, like you mentioned, with concealed. If you do anything, even if you made the gun easier to shoot,
or even
more comfortable
safer
for you, or safer, right? I mean, because look, we're in California. I don't know, every single range day I've ever shot with a fixed magazine, Juggernaut Tactical, Maglock, whatever the fuck, those things, every single range day, it never fails, dude. Somebody's always on the side of the fucking range trying to fix their
flagging
fucking jam.
Somebody, like trying to download a weapon that's got rounds in it.
Yes. And one of those things is always jamming. It's always malfunctioning. So they actually make the gun less safe. And that's our government who did that.
That's
so
a whole thing.
Yeah. So think about that before you mod a gun. And then if you do have to defend yourself, it doesn't matter if you're in the right or in the wrong. You're going to have to go through the whole lawyer situation, right? You're going to have to deal with the court and the jury and however the picture is painted.
Yeah, it just might make it easier on you if there's not so much extra that they have to go through. Not to say you can't modify your gun or you shouldn't modify your gun. Just understand that that's a reality. Yeah,
I'll tell you right now, my Gen 5 G45, I know the G45 is only Gen 5, but I have to say Gen 5 because the recoil spring and the trigger is a little bit more forgiving on the Gen 5s. My Gen 5 G45 with a Trigicon RMR, that thing shoots like, I don't know, maybe a 9 out of 10. If my G17 is a 10, it's maybe an 8.5 or 9 out of 10 in terms of performance. Like maybe it doesn't, shoot quite as fast because it doesn't have the ported slide and like the dual port comp. Mm-hmm. Maybe, it doesn't have like the race trigger. But my point is that I've done pretty much anything I could possibly want to do with the Glock, including shoot 100 yards C-zone steel with a G45 with an RMR. So why the fuck do you need anything else if you're carrying a gun?
I'm not going to argue.
That's going to keep you out of trouble.
Yeah, I can't. I don't think it's.
That's going to be reliable.
There'll always be somebody out there that will want to debate this. Yeah. But the reality of it is what is practical. Like if you can do that, then why do you need a bunch of other shit? It would be because you want it to look cool, or you think it's making you look cool, or you think it's going to make you better than what reality is. But hey, listen, it's fucking America. Do what you want. Just understand that every time you do one of these things, what you're saying, it may not be doing exactly what you want it to, or could be putting you in a situation that might make a practical situation impractical.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of this has to do, like I said, with like social media, people seeing other people's like setups. And then also, it's very true that a lot of people only have one, maybe two guns. And if they have one, maybe two, they're going to get impatient. They're going to feel weird. Like, okay, I want a light. Okay, I want a new trigger. Okay, I need this new slide. I might as well get the fucking $1,000 agency slide because I need to mount it on I need it for my RMR. Like, that's the only way I'm getting a red dot. You know what I mean? Well, if you're in California, I guess that's an excuse. But like, if you have a Gen 5 MOS, like that's what I had with my 45, and you get like a little like adapter and for $70 and you're good to go. But just, I guess if there's anything to take away from this is know what your goal is, because there's different goals for everything, and also have discipline. I know it's hard to say, but like, don't do the comp where you have to figure out if you have the perfect grip. I mean, because first of all, who knows if single-handed, if you even have a decent grip. I've never had issues with my comps, but like, I can see that being a thing where somebody has.
I've seen it being a thing.
Yeah, where somebody has like a shitty grip in the first place, and then you give them like single-handed. Like, we're talking about self-defense here, right? Yeah, you probably don't want to fucking comp and a light recoil spring if you're single-handed and your fucking heart rate's elevated and you're some awkward position. And we're just talking hypothetically here if this is a self-defense.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that go into that. I mean, training in low light situations and with one hand, with a handheld light in it and the other hand, you know, with a pistol in it. I mean, if you haven't trained low light and you're thinking, well, I've got a setup here and it's fine. I have a comp on my, and this is going to work fine, but you've only ever trained with a two-handed grip on that gun, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? When you're out there in the range during the day, I guess is what I'm saying. Most people are shooting, they're not shooting one-handed. I don't see a lot of that happening, or weak side for that matter. So yeah, good point.
And like, I know that, I don't know, GBRS just did a video that I didn't watch. Not that I don't want to, I'm probably going to end up watching it, about comps. And I guess they like did like some Mythbusters shit about like comps from retention, like up close, because like a comp, you can see, if you watch my videos where I'm shooting with a comp, you can see gas like shooting out 2 feet in the air, right? So where do you think that comp is when you know you're pressing that thumb into the nipple and you have to shoot up close in a real self-defense scenario?
Yeah, you're talking about like hand-to-hand type shit.
Yeah, so like what happens if like you to me right here, this is like 2.5, 3 feet away from each other. What if I have to take a step back and draw? And then what if I can't get full presentation? Because that's very realistic that I'm going to be compressed while I shoot you. Where the fuck are those gases going from that comp? Probably in my fucking face. Yeah. That's not good. You know, so there's like little things that you have to think about, which comes with training, comes with experience, or you can like ask people who know better. You know what I mean? Not that I'm saying I know better about everything. I'm just saying like, I obviously try to like sort things out with my own experiences so that I can like pass on that information so people don't have to experience that.
Right. It's thinking critically.
Yeah.
It's working through the problem and trying to think through the scenario. And it's not weird to do that.
Yeah.
What I think is weird is buying a gun based on what somebody else has.
Yeah.
Right, without trying it on,
unless it's like gun number 5.
Yeah, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But going back to most people only have maybe 1 or 2 guns. What are you using this for? That person with 1 gun is probably not just a race gun. Yeah. Probably not. That person that's going to the quote unquote racetrack or to the USPSA range, they don't just have 1 gun. They have lots of guns. I mean, I don't know anybody that goes out that only has 1. But to your point, that let's just be smart about how we're building.
And let's be honest here too. Like, most likely, there's probably a good chance that if you ever had to defend yourself in a concealed carry situation, a revolver might even be a really good.
Oh, you're opening up a hole.
I know. I'm just saying. My dad would love that I'm saying this because he's such a fucking FUD. But no, really though, my dad carries like I think it's like a Slick Hammer, 357 Magnum snub nose, and like a little leather pouch, you know. But hey, dude, no, I was talking to fucking Raul from Rogue Methods briefly about this one time, and he made like a really good fucking point, dude. Like, that trigger sucks. It's like a long 2-stage trigger. It's not going to go off on its own for sure. Because I mean, I feel like I'm decently strong, and that thing takes some force.
17-pound trigger.
Yeah, exactly. And so you have that thing in some sort of fucking little baby holster. It's small, concealable, and like from me to you, you point shoot. Single hand, both hands, doesn't fucking matter. You just fucking point shoot, right?
Very effective.
In most cases, when you're concealing, you're not playing superhero. You're playing get the fuck out of dodge, right?
It's true.
So like, if we really want to talk about it, like I said, a stock Glock is going to be reliable. But even that's going to be like, if you actually buy like a decent company, like a Smith and Wesson or some shit like that, revolver. My point in saying that is like, you really don't need like a fucking compensator in that issue and like springs and shit like that. If it's your only fucking Glock, or we're not just talking about Glocks, like M&P 40s, 9mm, whatever. Berettas are great guns. CZs are great. Those are all just like hella fucking heavy, and the manipulations are a little bit harder to get used to.
It's a different gun.
A little bit more moving parts, but those are great guns. You don't have to rock Glock. You and me for me as a business, I know I have to use Glock because like that's the most popular gun in the world. It's the easiest manual of arms. It's probably the most reliable. I think that's pretty safe to say. And the price point is extremely affordable in relation to everything else you can buy.
It's like buying a Chevy or Ford, man. Everybody's got one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, and if it was zombie apocalypse, you can find fucking Glock parts everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. You got something to trade.
Yeah.
You got currency.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you had anything else that
no, man, I was gonna let you run with that one. I think you did a great job with it, dude. Like good takeaways there, I think, for people, particularly for those people that are kind of thinking they've recently got into this and they're seeing all of this stuff happen and on social media, which is, you know, I mean, it's part of the thing, you know.
It's big influence.
We had Frank on, right? You know, what's that on that gun? You know, he's taking all these cool pictures and you know, what is this and why is a person running that? And, you know, the videos are getting a little bit more sizzly and a little cooler, and there's a lot of great points being made, and there's a lot of good product out there. It's just, you know, what's right for you as the consumer, what's right for you in terms of your practical application, your safety, your home defense, your fun guns, you know, whatever else, and make smart decisions. So maybe think critically before you go out and spend a bunch of money and strapping stuff onto your gun.
Yeah.
Right.
Because at that point you become like a liability if you don't know what the fuck you're doing with training or with your gun.
Which is just silly. And then you look like an idiot when the point at the beginning was to look cool.
Yeah.
So I think we'll end with that.
Yeah.
Don't look like a douche when you're trying to look cool.
I think that's good.
All right, brother. Good talking to you.
All right. Same, man.